give you a talk about CARLA, and we believe CARLA is the way forward when you're trying to get good production, but yet still breed animals with low worm fat. So, you know, you don't want ewes that are going out there contaminating pastures. So the whole point of it is to breed sheep that have a good immune system. It's all about the immune system. And I'll hand it now over to Richard.
Thanks, Murray. As Murray said, I'm from Ag Research. We're actually being renamed. We're now known as a Bioeconomy Science Institute. Unfortunately, a bit like DSIR, Ag Research is going west as an entity. I'm based in Palmerston North with the parasitology team. We do a lot of research around controlling parasites, one way or another. Next slide, Chris. Okay. So look, what I'm going to talk about today is host resistance, the ability of the host, mainly today talking about sheep, to withstand parasite challenge, as opposed to, which we've all heard about, anti-limping resistance, which is our parasite population developing resistance to the creatures that we use. So gastrointestinal parasites, or as we all know them as worms, cause significant production losses, especially in young stock. And for the past 40 plus years, we have been using or relying on drenches to control parasites. But especially in the last few years, a lot of farmers have been reporting that their drenches are no longer working. And as you know, and that's really anti-limping resistance starting to really hit home. So you know, there's a number of things in the toolbox. If you've been to a Wormwise seminar, they'll talk about a lot of different things, refugia, different forages and things. But what we're going to talk about really is being able to breed for improved immunity or host resistance to gastrointestinal parasites. And this is really a practical long-term option for controlling parasites. Traditionally, breeders have used worm feed to measure or host resistance. It's been around 35 plus years. And it has a number of issues, especially for the breeder around using Co-operative. The CARLA saliva test was developed essentially to address these issues while also improving host resistance. Now you would have seen, if you've been to a Wormwise seminar or looked at some of the Wormwise calendar, you'll see this picture. And you probably all know eggs passed out of the sheep into the dung. They develop through to L1, the parasites that infect animals. Sheep when they're grazing, or livestock when they're grazing, will consume those L3s and they will develop through the other stages to adults, produce eggs, and those get excreted out. So host resistance is essentially the immune response to controllers. And we know that what we have is age-related immunity, so there's a lamb ages, the immune system develops, and of course it's exposed to parasite challenge, and it will develop some sort of immunity to parasite challenge. And essentially 4 things happen in the animal. The immune system either prevents the larvae from establishing in the first place, and that's why I'm going to talk about how CARLA specific antibody might be involved. Suppression of the egg production in some parasites, limiting the size of the worm, and ultimately expulsion of the adult worms. These all take energy, and they, from one animal to another, you'll see a lot of different variation. And another thing that's actually come out of our group, we also know that host resistance can affect the ability of eggs, once they're excreted, to develop through to the L3 stage. Piggery count, hopefully you've probably all heard about this. It's a proxy for the worm burden. So egg counts generally are reflective of the burden in the animal. This involves taking fecal samples and measuring the eggs, and from there the breeder can get estimated breeding values for piggery count. Brands with good worm-fed EBVs produce offspring that are more resistant to parasite challenge. pretty simple really. However, for the breeder, this has a number of issues. The worst one is that they've got to withhold drenching, so they get a severe hit in production. They have a very small window to do the heat testing, and of course you've got to stick my finger on the backside of the sheep. I've yet to meet anyone who actually really enjoys doing that. And there's this lingering perception that low peak size may be less productive. So this is genetic progress for worm peck in our national flock. This blue line represents essentially the progress with piggery counts. So you can see since we started breeding for whatever traits, in actual fact our national flock has got more susceptible to parasites. It's only in the last few years where the breeders who have been breeding for worm peck have started to have some sort of impact. But the reality is, by breeding essentially for production, when you're not also breeding or selecting for ability to handle parasites, our national flock has just got more susceptible. The worm peck guys and the guys who are doing it the longest, the worm peck gold guys, they're starting to make some really good progress. I think to note here, the heritability of worm peck is about 20%, and at the moment it's about 67% of flocks. So CARLA antibody response. So this is a whole new thing. This developed out of a research project that we were doing in ag research at Wallace School 25 plus years ago. This CARLA molecule was found on the surface of L3 parasites. All the parasites that infect livestock in New Zealand have this molecule on it. It's only present on the L3 stage, so once the L3 infects the animal, it will, after a few days, get rid of the CARLA coat that's on it. And antibodies can be produced by the animal to CARLA. And in sheep with high levels of CARLA, this is present both the saliva and intestinal mucus. And these antibodies essentially bind to the worm and prevent them from establishing. I'll give you some more details about it shortly. This is actually what it looks like when we purify it. Next one. So this is a little bit of 101 parasite immunology. I haven't done this part before. Some feedback would be really good. So essentially, sheep consume L3 off the pasture. They have a protective sheath which they shed. The CARLA on the surface then is used by the L3 to work out where it infects the host, trying to find an epithelial surface. They infect the host and they develop through to an L4, they shed the CARLA, and then this develops through to an adult and they produce eggs. What actually happens in an immune animal, same thing happens, L3 to consume, they shed the CARLA, they develop, this CARLA is recognised by the immune system, they make antibodies to this molecule, and then these antibodies then combine to the L3 after it's shed its protective sheath. And with the antibodies bound to the worm, they can't work out where to infect the host, and they just get passed out of the animal. Don't really kill the worm, they just prevent it from establishing. And if you want to know a little bit more about immunology, this IgA response that we measure, it's produced, all mammals produce this all the time. It's there to protect the mucosal surfaces from bacteria, viruses, or worms. The main thing to note though is that if an animal's got a good antibody response to this CARLA molecule, it reduces L3 establishment, so you have less adult worms established, so you have lower piggery count. As CARLA prevents the establishment at the beginning, so you get less adult worms, you have less biomass of parasites for the immune system to fight, and therefore it needs less energy to fight the adult worms, so you have more energy available for growth. And as I'll show you shortly, as a result we see high CARLA animals generally are more productive. And this is a little bit of work that we did way back, just to show you the definitive proof that this works. What we did is we took L3s, should have been my L3 over there, we incubated them with antibody, we then injected them back into animals that have never seen parasites, and essentially 80 to 90% of those larvae failed to establish, they just got passed out of the animal. So we were actually the first people to actually demonstrate a protective mechanism that prevents larvae from establishing in the sheep. And this is just a picture showing, this is what CARLA looks like on the worm, and then they start shedding it, and yeah, and then once it's shed, you end up with a worm without that CARLA body. Next one. CARLA without worm. So the CARLA saliva test, in saliva, it's heritable. It's got about a heritability of 30%. It's got a good genetic correlation with feed. So that basically means that animals with good genetics for CARLA will have good genetics for low piggery count. And generally lambs with a high CARLA response have 20 to 30% lower piggery counts than an animal with a low or no CARLA response. And because this is not a perfect relationship with feed, selection for CARLA will result in about 60 to 70% of the genetic gain we'll have with worm feed. So, you know, if you want to say which is best, worm feed is best at getting you there, but there's other advantages around CARLA that we don't have with worm feed. And the main one is productivity. So high CARLA lambs in autumn are around 1.5 kilos heavier than lambs that don't or have a low CARLA response. In an environment where there's a good larval challenge. If there's no larval challenge, like the grazing crop, then this doesn't work. And we've seen no correlation with DAG score in all the work that we've done. Next slide. We also did a project with the Sustainable Farming Fund money where we looked at CARLA response in ewes. So we took ewe lambs in 8 or 9 flocks throughout the country, and we followed them for up to 4 years. And what we found that at least over that period, all the high CARLA animals sustained the CARLA response, and they tended to have lower piggery counts and improved growth when they're under a larval challenge. And those high CARLA ewes had better body condition score, and they actually produced more lambs born as well. And some work that has been done with a collaboration in Canada have shown that the offspring, you know, we've already shown that, but the offspring of high CARLA ewes have low effects and nearly 5% heavier in weight 120 days. It's 120 days after turnout because most of the lambs are born indoors during winter. So essentially you can use CARLA genetics to improve the immunity of your ewe flock. And if you've been to a worm-wise seminar, you'll know that having an undrenched ewe flock acts as a good reservoir for unselected worms and refugia, and they act as a good net removers of larvae on parasites. So, you know, one of the advantages of buying good CARLA sires is that if you're looking at using those sires for your replacement ewes into your flock, then there's a lot of other advantages of having that genetics in your flock. Thanks. So this graph here, which I always struggle to explain, but essentially we've got here, this is breeding value for CARLA across here, so high CARLA, and out here breeding values for fed. So these are essentially sire groups, so each of these represents the progeny from a sire, and you can see here that high CARLA EBVs quite, you know, there's a good correlation with low EBVs for fed, and again, otherwise, animals with high fed have low CARLA. And then over here, this is just showing you a production advantage in weight. So the high CARLA EBV sires have high EBVs for weight as well. So, you know, there's a really solid relationship at the sire level for both production and worm feed. Next slide. So this is just representing the genetic progress for CARLA. Of course, CARLA's been around a lot less than worm feed, and to be honest, we've struggled to get uptake by the breeder industry. Basically, the breeders tell me, well, our clients aren't asking for CARLA, or they're not looking at host resistance, so we're not going to use it. So initially we had quite an uptake, but until here, this is all noise because most of the flocks aren't connected and we had no index. We now have an index for CARLA, and you can see that in the last few years we're starting to make really good progress with CARLA. This is the CARLA flocks, and this is within all flocks. At the moment we've got 7 connected flocks, but that's going to improve real rapidly. Next slide. Because we've gone from we had an initial uptake and then it's just fallen off, and in the last 3 years we've had a 30% growth year in, year out, simply because all of a sudden farmers are seeing the impacts of drench resistance, and they're asking the breeders, what are you doing? And the breeders are saying, well, we're going to do something. So we've had this big uptake and clients now doing CARLA. So what should you be asking your ram breeder? Hopefully Murray's got these answers. In today's climate drench resistant ram riders should be asking the breeders, what are they doing? And if they're not doing worm feed or CARLA, then they're not doing anything else. They might say, well, we withhold drenching or whatever. There's not a lot of science to back that up, but there's a lot of genetic science to back up either doing worm feed or CARLA. And essentially by investing in these genetics, you'll improve your young stock's ability to handle parasites and biocontamination on pasture, and therefore have an advantage in production. And also your stud breeder should also be measuring eggs. Easy thing to measure, doesn't cost much. Next slide. And just to show that it also works in other animals, we've done a lot of work in deer and some work in Angora goats, and essentially the same thing. It's heritable, and deer is very heritable, and it's favourably correlated with both lungworm and piggery counts, and the same in Angora goats. And we're actually in the middle of our deer season right now. We had just about all the main venison deer breeders, both wobbly and red deer in New Zealand, doing CARLA. And we've just started doing some work with Beagleman Genetics looking at CARLA in cattle. But we did have a collaboration with the French, and what they did see is that in cattle herds which had the highest exposure to parasite challenge, they had reduced piggery counts. But this is just an ongoing thing. Now, what we think, this is just observation. It's a completely uncontrolled experiment. But these dots here represent CARLA responses from flocks. These blue ones, what we saw when we first started. What we got here, yellow was last year, and these triangles are the shedding sheep flocks. And what we're seeing is some of these shedding sheep flocks are producing an earlier, stronger CARLA response than the traditional wool breeds. The explanation for that is relatively quite simple. It takes energy to grow wool, takes energy and nutrients to fight parasites. You're not having to put as much energy into growing wool, then you've got more energy available to fight parasites, and therefore most likely you'll see better responses to parasites like CARLA. So in summary, CARLA antibody response in sheep is heritable, about 30%. High CARLA lambs will have 20 to 30% lower piggery counts than low CARLA animals. They'll be more productive if they're under a parasite challenge, and there's no correlation with increased DAG score. And in ewes, they can sustain that response up at least till, probably do it until you kill them. But over the period that we measured them, they have lower piggery counts, and when under high parasite challenge, they have better body condition score, and they'll produce more lambs, high CARLA ewes on. And their offspring obviously will have lower fat and higher weights. And that's it. One more. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.